We're live. Robert J. Conley here. Come on in, pull up a chair, pour yourself a cream soda. All right. This video is about the characteristics, strengths, and weaknesses of inspirational leaders. And this matters because inspirational leaders are game changers, literally. We'll be talking about Tom Brady a little bit later. All right. So first, some housekeeping. Please hit those like and subscribe buttons. If you benefit from this video, share it with a friend. And if you have any questions or comments, please, by all means, put them in the comment section. All right, so let's look first at the word map of the characteristics of inspirational leaders. Words that apply: empathic, compassionate, ethical, mystical, healer, enthusiastic, authentic, trusting, prophetic, sage, self-actualizers, intuitive. Now, inspirational leaders they're the ultimate catalysts. And we may or may not consider these people leaders. I think some of them are, but they light up the screen. So these are famous people. They just light up the screen. I'm gonna give you a list of names, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Tom Cruise, Faith Hill, Tom Selleck, Crystal Fuentes, John Tesh, Olivia Newton-John, Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Amy Grant. You get the point. When you see them on the screen, you cannot help but just feel their radiance in front of you. And you know people in your own life who are the same way when they walk into a room. And that's who we're talking about tonight. So what are the strengths of inspirational leaders? Like I said, they're the catalysts. They cause chemical reactions in people. They cause action. They cause good morale. Remember in a prior video, I used the 4 words: focus, ignite, execute, improve. Well, these are the ultimate igniters. They're true people. They're committed to warm and mutually respectful work environments. Their power comes from their sheer belief in others. Their commitment to identity empowers people, and that belief transcends opposition and is very powerful. Another thing is that nobody can read other people better than this group. Half the time, they sense the vibrations in others before the actual person senses them. They're truly gifted in human communication, usually excellent presentation skills, natural teachers. They're creative. They actually know there is no box. Their intuition serves them in seeing the big picture. And their cardinal virtue is justice. So let me say a few things about justice, because that's a word that is getting a little twisted about in our culture. And when I use the term justice, I'm referring to the proper treatment and dignity due every human being, giving him or her his due. And this is why justice is said to be blind. Nothing matters other than that you are a human being who should be treated with dignity and should be treated fairly. So crimes are an act of treating someone unjustly. When it's said we are bringing him to justice, what should actually be said, and this is a little bit wordy, admittedly, but what should actually be said is, we believe he has treated someone unjustly, and we are bringing him to account for that injustice. So vengeance isn't justice, it's retribution. And forgiveness is the only thing that ends cycles of revenge. So when I talk about this group bringing justice and it's their cardinal virtue, it is that commitment to the dignity of every individual that is so powerful, that comes from within them and empowers other people. All right. So I almost feel like, I'm not going to, anyway. So some of the difficulties in inspirational leader some of the difficulties of inspirational leaders is that this these heartfelt things can cause them to put like the morale of individuals above the mission of the organization. So these are things that come up when they're actually running the organization. And you can't put the morale of an individual above an organization to continue to have an effective organization. So there's a tendency to do that. They might overuse diplomacy when just hard discipline is called for. Their intuition, as powerful as it is, it doesn't mean it's always right. And so it's important that they have strategic and tactical colleagues who they can check in with and bounce ideas off of, and to make sure that they're doing the things that are most productive for the organization. Being at the top, high pressure, high tension situations, their feelings can overwhelm them sometimes. Previous video, I talked about two of the most successful coaches in NFL history, Dick Vermeil and Bill Walsh. They were both inspirational leaders, and they both just got fried by the job. It was they've said it themselves. It was very hard on them. So the fact that they also are very gifted in diplomatic matters and in dealing with people, they can make it look so easy that at times others will not fully appreciate what they're doing for the organization and for the smooth functioning of the organization. And then when pushed too far and limits are exceeded, the hard edge will come out, and the hard edge can surprise and shock both the recipient of it and the owner of it. So that's one of the things actually that Bill Walsh talked about in his memoirs. So when dealing with inspirational leaders, what should you do? Well, first of all, be aware of their feelings. Even though you're possibly a subordinate, be aware of the sensitivity and be respectful. And, I've come to believe in working with many inspirational leaders that, I know, so I'm not I'm not in the inspirational tribe. And I really have come to believe that as hard as I try, I'll never fully be able to understand how deeply they feel. And I think that is something that when you accept that, if you're not a fellow inspirational, then be aware that you might have a shortcoming in that, and that to have as much sensitivity about it as possible. When you're confronting tough issues, confront the issue. Like literally sit on the same side of the table and confront an issue. Don't have things come across as personal attacks. It's counterproductive with anyone, but it's especially counterproductive with inspirational leaders. And they have a true commitment to taking care of the people. And so in confronting things together to solve problems, there's no better teammate. So literally sit on the same side of the table, confront issues together. Especially if you're a stabilizer or a tactician, don't dismiss the intuition of the inspirational leader. So for the most part, tacticians and stabilizers are not highly intuitive. I know I'm painting with some generalizations, but I'll stick with it for the sake of the point. But when you're a stabilizer or a tactician, don't be dismissive of intuition. Take the time to understand it. Take the time. Take what time it takes to understand it. And when possible, turn that intuition into tangible action. That's where your organization reach new levels of productivity, good morale. You'll start reaching new heights. So, always remind yourself to learn people skills from these ultimate people persons. There's a lot to learn. Also, because they're so generous and warm-hearted, it can sometimes be easy to forget that a lot of this can also be depleting. The leading for an inspirational leader can be depleting. And so to show appreciation and compassion to your inspirational leaders is also another very mutually positive thing to do. And then, and especially I'm talking to you stabilizers and tacticians, when you're submitting a plan or making plans, presenting plans to an inspirational leader, make sure you have given thought to the impact your plans will have on the morale of the people. Be people conscious. And some of the stabilizers and tacticians can gloss over the very real people issues in trying to get to the bottom line or to get the goal. So the reason I keep bringing them up, one of the reasons is that it's kind of a side note, but inspirational leaders are like the mirror image of tactical leaders. So if you saw my previous video and you remember some of my quotes, I mean, tactical leaders just all about power and force and, taking the hill and eviscerating the opponent and getting the other guy to submit. It's all about domination. And so they're good at dominating tasks and getting things done and keeping the production line moving and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times it's by force and by power. And so inspirational leaders are the ultimate cooperators. They're about diplomacy and finesse. If you look if you look at tacticians, and think in terms of, I won't say all, but most police officers, military, they tend to be of the tactician style. And so, they always have their suit of armor on, and they're always even in business, like the guys that are just totally sharply dressed with pointy lapels and just, and again, there are other styles that do this to some degree, but there's just the look of tacticians that are just like ready for warfare. And then, a lot of times the inspirational leaders, they'll take the time to put the sweater on, like Mr. Rogers, to be more approachable. So anyway, I just share those observations. A big part of this is just trying to get people to lighten up and appreciate really just how different each of us is. And when we start looking at it through this way, all the opportunities to cooperate and to make things better. So I'm going to do my quotes now. I'm going to share some quotes from some well-known inspirational leaders. One of the all-time greats, Hall of Famer, Mahatma Gandhi. So a couple of his quotes: "An eye for an eye only ends up making the whole world blind." So remember that comment I made about justice and forgiveness is the solution for injustice. Gandhi's speaking to that right there. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. Where there is love, there is life. In a gentle way, you can shake the world. So again, you can see that mirror opposite of the tactician who's going to storm the hill. In a gentle way, you can shake the world. All right. So one of our few, in fact, I'm trying to think if, I think there's one other, but I'm drawing a blank right now. It doesn't matter. George H.W. Bush is the only member of the inspirational tribe in at least the last 50 years, possibly in history. I'm drawing a blank right this minute. Anyway, a couple of George H.W. Bush quotes. "No problem of human making is too great to be overcome by human ingenuity, human energy, and the untiring hope of the human spirit." Feel that empowerment that he is conveying? "America is never wholly herself unless she is engaged in high moral principle. We as a people have such a purpose today. It is to make kinder the face of the nation and gentler the face of the world. I do not mistrust the future. I do not fear what is ahead, for our problems are large, but our heart is larger." That is absolutely perfect inspirational thought process. And this is probably my favorite of him because it's so emblematic of so much of the criticism that he took. He said, "Don't confuse seeing the other guy's point of view with being soft. Don't confuse seeing the other guy's point of view with being soft." It's beautiful. All right. Now I'm going to go to Mr. Rogers. And you go, "Mr. Rogers, leader? Come on." Yep. I submit he's a leader. He knew what should be done, and he knew how to create the space. Every day he created space on his show for children to learn and to just soak up the beauty of what the experience of being with Mr. Rogers was. I mean, I was not of the Mr. Rogers era, but my kids were, and oh my, it's just such a gift. And so he knew what should be done, and he created the space. So a couple of his quotes: knowing that we can be loved exactly as we are gives us all the best opportunity for growing into the healthiest of people. How sad it is that we give up on people who are just like us. Discovering the truth about ourselves is a lifetime's work, but it's worth the effort. Remember one of the words I said, self-actualization? He's speaking right to that. All right. So now we're going to talk about Tom Brady. Love him or hate him. So Tom is an inspirational leader. And here are a couple of my favorite quotes from him. I've had just about everything punched. I've had things grabbed that just shouldn't be grabbed. Oh shoot, that has nothing to do with what I was talking about. I just love that quote. It's hilarious. All right. My personal feelings are my personal feelings. I don't want to express them to anyone except for a very few people. It doesn't do any good. It really doesn't. He's protecting his heart. I'm not really concerned about portraying this tough warrior. I mean, that's part of my job, and I take that very seriously, but I don't have anything to hide. I'm not concerned with what people think. His next one is: football is unconditional love. I mean, I've never experienced football as unconditional love, but that is just so enlightening when you look at it coming through an inspirational style person. He is experiencing love with his teammates, the cooperation, the hard work. That is unconditional love. Next one is: you never get over losses. I've never gotten over one loss I've had in my career. They always stick with me. And I'm going to speak to that in a moment. And then the last one is: I'm an emotional person. Sometimes I can't help it. So for those of you, in case you've new to America or don't know, Tom Brady is the winningest quarterback in NFL history. He went to 9 Super Bowls with the New England Patriots. He won 6 of them. He's about to play in his 10th Super Bowl for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He has gone to the Super Bowl 50% of the seasons in which he has played. There is no other quarterback, there's no other player close to that. So I'm going to make some comments. I just want to preface by saying, I'm not a mind reader. I've never met Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, Bruce Arians. However, I do study coaches. I think they provide great examples in leadership mentoring. I am an expert in personality types and observing the speech and the actions of people. And so I'm going to present based on my observations. And as always, I'm more than welcome being proven wrong. So I believe Tom has succeeded with both coaches because he's been blessed to have visionary leaders who employ winning strategies. He could have played for close to almost any other coaches in the NFL and not had the success that he's had. So, and I'm going to talk more about visionary leaders tomorrow. That's the topic. Tomorrow is the final of the 4 is visionary leaders. But both men are winning visionary leaders. And what Belichick lost this year is exactly what Arians needed. He needed an inspirational leader. Arians has a winning record. He's over 600 winning. And he, excuse me, he's never been to the Super Bowl. It was his first Super Bowl. But the thing that just struck me at the end of the game, it was almost too perfect. I couldn't have written it myself. In the postgame interview after winning the NFC title, Arians actually credited Brady with saying that what he brought to the team was inspiring teammates to believe. That was the thing that changed. He ignited belief I mean, you can't get much better ignition than that. So that whole thing of, you've got a proven strategist in Arians, but what's missing? What's missing? What's missing? Oh, well, see, we've got players that work hard and we've got all of our quality standards, our strength training, what's missing? Ignition, belief, that inspirational leader. And it was Brady's leadership it permeates the entire organization. So a related comment to that now is one of Belichick's well-known mantras is believe in the system. Believe in the system. Now that's sound advice for everyone. Find systems to follow. It's only when you actually are engaging and executing systems on a regular basis that you can have prosperity. If you're always reinventing the wheel or not doing things consistently, you're not going to have the same great results that you have in having proven systems. So it was especially good that Brady was in an environment like that. One of the reasons that believing in the system is so powerful is that it removes an element of personalized judgment that can otherwise arise. You don't get too high, you don't get too low. So like with an emotional guy like Brady, the system gives him guardrails within which to manage his emotions. Remember earlier I shared how he remembers every loss he's had? Well, a system he can manage his emotions within that. It simplifies his job. It's like, hey, Tom, you know what? Your job is to show up each day ready to work your tail off, and we'll win. We're providing the system. You just show up and work hard. And so Brady still has the emotional element, but that by having the system, he can operate, he can consistently perform. So, excuse me. Another element of the relationship between Brady and those two coaches, both coaches are very good at moving on. That's a loss. Even with a win, that's a win. Next game. That's a loss. Next game. There's not a big emotional attachment. There's a review. What can we do better? What did we do wrong? But they don't get engaged in the personalized judgmental stuff. And one of the favorite quotes that people say about Belichick was when somebody kept asking him about some issues, and Belichick just deadpan, we're on to Cincinnati. We're on to Cincinnati. I mean, it was just classic. And so, Belichick's strategic leadership in getting his team focused on the next game is also something that then an inspirational leader like Brady can then take that and go, yeah, we're on to the next game. Okay, I'll apply my inspirational powers to that. It's always about the next game. Now, Brady does, to a certain extent, have that innate mindset himself, but he without the coaches having their mindsets, he could easily carry the weight of a loss on his back, and it could crush him. So again, if he had been in with other coaches that carry losses, and there are certain types that do carry losses, and they're very, what you call them is losing coaches. So finally, I think this is my last point. As hard-nosed as Belichick comes across in public, the word is that he never makes it personal with players. That you're either doing your job or not, and it's not a personal thing. There's not personal attack, and so this aligns with Brady's innate desire for mutually respectful work environments. And Brady is known as an inspirational leader, on and off the field, in the locker room, treating every level of player from rookies to vets with dignity, and treating every person in the organization with appreciation and dignity. So, it's not an accident that I don't know if it's an accident that Brady did a good job of choosing another strategic head coach, and also a team that happened to be well stocked with the players that complement Brady's style play. I'm not dismissing those, but the synergy between Brady and the strategic coaches is something that every organization can learn from. So that is what I've got to say about Brady. So here's some tips for inspirational leaders. Don't make personal decisions out of empathy for employees. Listen to input. Like, remember I talked about the stabilizers, the tacticians. Listen to their input. You may not love it, but be focused more on what's best for the organization. And from working with inspirational leaders, one of the hardest things to do is to reduce this innate empathy and to put more power into the whole organization, what's best for the organization. Not that they can't, it's just a challenge. Avoid making, similar to that, avoid making organizational decisions based only on your feelings. Listen again to those strategizers, tacticians, the stabilizers. Listen to those other three groups and try to get the whole picture. One of the hazards of leadership is more criticism. And, just as Tom Brady does, develop systems that give you guardrails for your emotions. And those systems you may or may not be able to design yourself, but seek out to design systems, to identify systems that can help you put those guardrails in place for yourself. And, take time. One of the things just so wonderful and powerful about inspirational leaders, and if you can't tell, I have a fondness for inspirational leaders. But one of the the optimism is contagious and one of the gifts. But what I urge inspirational leaders to do is take time to impose your own skepticism about your idealizing. And you again, turn to those other positions. You can get all you need, but take time also just to do it yourself to the best that you can. And remember, like, one of the common things that inspirational leaders do, because they're such fans of each individual, is that they'll aspire more for a person's success than the person does. And like, they can't understand, why is this person working hard or whatever. And they'll actually wear themselves out aspiring for, like, having this higher aspiration than the actual person does. And so take time to be your own skeptic and to question, may or may not be the right person. It's a hard decision, but it's for the sake of the organization. So when you're a leader in that position, that's where you've got to go. All right. Just wrapping up, places for inspirational leaders. Where do inspirational leaders fit? Well, inspirational leaders fit where they can negotiate to do what it is they do. And in certain organizations, it's harder than others. And but there are places in all sorts. So in general, like, public relations, ministry, personnel, marketing, teaching, counseling, social work. Many corporate trainers are inspirational leaders. One of the finest inspirational leaders I ever had a chance to meet with, and I didn't actually end up coaching him, but we had multiple meetings, was very high up in one of our nation's big city police departments. And he was a true healer. And his commitment to treating everyone justly had profound effect. This had been a troubled police department, and his power, the power of his commitment, changed things for the markedly better within this police department. And so, even though one wouldn't necessarily think of that, and I'm straying a little bit, but this guy was so interesting. And so after we had talked for a few minutes, I just looked at him. I said, "So, how uncomfortable was your first 5 years when you had to be out on the streets?" And he was like, "Oh, it was brutal. I knew I wasn't one of those guys." He wasn't a tactical person. He didn't have the vocabulary at the time. He had later developed it, but he didn't have the understanding of why he felt so out of place. And so, inspirational leaders, at times, inspirational leaders can have a harder time on the lower rungs, but if you can work through and find that sweet spot where you're just beautiful lightning rod catalytic capabilities can be put to use, it's sweet. It's sweet for you, and it's sweet for everybody who gets to work with you. So, okay, I'm going to stop yelling at the inspirational leaders now. All right. So, join me in the next video. Well, you'll learn about the critical role that visionary, strategic leaders play in getting things done. And until next time, I hope you're blessed with an inspirational leader in your life. All right. Take care. Cheers.